Hello, everyone. It is 2 o'clock, so we are going to get started. My name is Malaya, and I am the trainer with RX Safe Del Norte. I want to thank you all for being here today, and welcome. Today we'll be enjoying the wonderful workshop by Shaunna Oteka McCovey, Poetry and the Art of Healing. So we do want to remind everyone that those who are on Zoom, you are muted and your video is off. If you have any questions, you can leave your questions in the chat or raise your hand. If you're on Facebook Live, you are also welcome to leave them in the chat. We have people monitoring, and we do want to remind you there is about a 45-second delay, so we'll get to your questions as soon as we can. I want to welcome Shaunna McCovey, and would you like to introduce yourself, Shaunna?
Ayukui. My name is Shaunna McCovey, and I am Yurok and Karuk, a member of the Yurok tribe. Just really briefly, I grew up on the Yurok reservation near the old village of Kepel on what's referred to as Downriver on McKinnon Hill. I grew up there, and yeah, have lived in a lot of different places, but Humboldt, but came back home a number of years ago to work in environmental and tribal realms, and so here I am today. That's very abbreviated, but I'll just start there, since I'll probably talk a little bit about growing up in my past and that kind of thing throughout the presentation.
Wonderful, thank you, and thank you for joining us. We're very excited to have you today. And I just want to say thank you to those watching, whether it be Zoom or Facebook Live. We appreciate having you here today. It is not our last event for today, actually, but it is our afternoon event for today. And it is the last week of the Wellness and Recovery series. So we do have a bunch of workshops going on this week. So make sure to stay tuned and find out what those are at the end of this presentation. Before we get started, I do, as always, want to go over some housekeeping slides to make sure that we remind everyone of our group agreements. As always, respect and kindness are key. If you're not being respectful and it becomes a persistent issue, you will be removed. Please show tolerance and sensitivity for differences. Participants in the group may come from different cultural, racial, gender, and sexually oriented backgrounds. We ask that you be aware and sensitive to judgmental comments and try and use positive language. Stay away from using any racial, homophobic, and degrading remarks. This is a safe space and it is free of judgment. It's all right to disagree with someone else's point of view. However, we don't put each other down for it. This is a space where participants should feel comfortable to be themselves, share their thoughts and ideas without any worry of punishment or judgment. For those who might be sharing stories today, participants and those in the chat, we ask that if you're sharing personal information, please try and leave specific names out of your stories. And you can, for example, use I know someone who, because using names can often aid in the spread of rumors, and it can detract from the point of view of the information trying to be communicated. As always, remember, you're totally welcome to ask questions. We have the chat open on Facebook Live and in the Zoom, so if you don't understand anything, remember you can ask for clarification. So we do want to also recognize that sometimes in these conversations, they can be very heavy topics and they may bring up some emotions and feelings, and that may be concerning. And so if you feel like you need to reach out to somebody, we encourage it. So we have a couple of numbers here, such as the mental health hotline for Del Norte and the 24-hour crisis services. So if you're feeling like you may need to reach out to someone, we strongly suggest it. And here are some resources. As far as our informed consent and privacy, each person's participation in this presentation is voluntary, so please respect the privacy of others and do not share personal information with anyone else. This training is being recorded and it is live on social media. So if you are participating via Zoom, Reminder, please turn your video camera off and stay muted. And yeah. We also, as always, like to start our presentations off with a land acknowledgement. So I'm acknowledging today that I am coming from Taloa Dene lands up in Northern Cali, and you may be coming from somewhere else. Some other local areas such as Yurok, Karuk, Hupa, Wia, and some of the many rancherias, Elk Valley, Resagini, Big Lagoon, Trinidad, Blue Lake, Table Bluff, and Ronerville. We understand you may be watching from somewhere else even, so if you are, remember to acknowledge the land you are on today. We honor the Indigenous peoples who lived together and cared for this land and each other since time immemorial. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have been the stewards of this land for generations. We know the effects of colonization have impacted Indigenous people disproportionately, and we hope that through this series, we can learn together to help heal and work towards a healthy future. Thank you everyone for acknowledging where you are at. And if you don't know, it doesn't hurt to do the research. So again, I just want to thank the land that we're on today and thank everyone who's joining us, especially our presenter. So I'm going to pass it over to our presenter, Shaunna. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you all for inviting me. I haven't done any readings for a while, but I have been talking a little bit to students and to other folks about some of the poetry that I've written in the past and some of the poetry that I've written recently, just related to you know, this sort of strange world we're living in now, where we talk to each other through Zoom and we're isolated. And it can be difficult. And so I think a lot of people have found different ways to deal with that or to cope with it. And I'm, you know, talking sort of about healing and that kind of thing. But I've actually written quite a bit. And so I guess I took advantage of it as best I could. Just the isolation and all of the feelings that go along with where we're at right now. And so I started writing poems about that. But you asked me to come here and join you today to talk about how poetry has this healing aspect. At least for me, it has, and I hope that for others it does too. Writing, whether it's writing or journaling or poetry, just finding ways to talk about some of the things that we have a hard time talking about. And so that's a lot of my poetry book, which is called the Smokehouse Boys. I don't know, I'll just show you real quick. I've got it bookmarked for some poems, but so I actually wrote that book in, it was published in 2005, which is a long time ago. But I wrote some poems in the book that were really kind of, I don't want to say controversial, but they were poems that we just weren't talking about in that sort of way. And when Jermaine reached out to me, she asked me to read a specific poem, which I'll do, about heroin and so it's about heroin and it's about our reservation communities and it's about addiction and how addiction is so prevalent, but also you know, it does, as you all know, so much damage. And so I'm going to read some of those poems, but I'm also going to read some of the poems that I feel I think have helped me get through some of the things that I've experienced in my life, not necessarily as an addict, but as a child of an alcoholic or a granddaughter of a heroin addict or a sister of a heroin addict. So I've got that experience and I try to write about that as well. It's difficult, you know, those first poems were really difficult to read, to talk about. And I think that some folks in the community were like, well, why are you talking about that? You know, because I'm talking about heroin and methamphetamine or it was called Frank, alcohol abuse, all of those things that impact us so drastically in Native communities, and that we're still struggling with and have been struggling with for a long time. And I wish I had the answer. I wish I had some sort of magic antidote to give to everyone. But the thing that helps me is writing about it and sharing the experiences. But really, I think what's helped the most throughout this journey that I've been on is the talking about it, and the not being afraid anymore to talk about those things that have caused us so much pain. And how do we break away from that pain? How do we forgive that pain and then forgive ourselves and move forward? And I think that's something that a lot of folks struggle with. So I grew up on the Yurok Reservation. At the time, it was the extension of the Hoopa Reservation. So that was, in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And then in the early 90s, it became the Yurok Reservation, the extension of the Hoopa Reservation. But, the Yurok folks, we all always lived there. And so I grew up around a lot of alcohol and a lot of drugs. And I guess I have always been kind of like an observer, if that makes sense. So I spent a lot of time watching these things happening. And really, since I was really very small, writing about it. And writing about, I guess, the way, at least at the time I didn't know, but I think as I kind of go back and look at some of the things I wrote when I was really young, I was writing about, those kinds of social impact things. But yeah, there was a lot of alcohol and a lot of drugs, and it was almost like normal, which is a weird word, but because what is really normal, but at that time, everyone was doing something like that, and some people weren't, and some people did it in spurts, and some people didn't. Some people had really serious problems with drugs and alcohol that I was around growing up. So you think about those things and how they impact you, and I think what I learned later on in life when I was in social work, I studied social work at Humboldt State and at Arizona State, is that you learn to look at the person's environment, and you learn to look beyond that just that person and that particular affliction. What is it that caused that? What sort of pain is there? Because a lot of times the root cause is some sort of pain or some sort of historical trauma or something that they have not necessarily been able to deal with or know how to deal with. And so, you see that a lot. So the poems, I think, are a way, and poetry for me at least has been a way to kind of therapeutically, if you want to call it that, work through some of these things, and realize that human beings we're so fragile, and we are susceptible, and we are hurt. We feel pain, and sometimes the way that we deal with that pain is to try to numb it because it's overwhelming and we don't know what to do with it. And I think that's what I saw mostly when I was growing up, was just that, the numbing of whatever particular pain that might have been. So I have a few poems that I want to read. And then I also wanted to say that, if you have questions as I'm talking or as I'm going through some of these poems, please feel free to ask them. And then we can have more of a conversation as opposed to me, just talking and reading and talking. I think that the conversations are a place where we can really get into things. And it's important to do that instead of just, listening to someone talk. I prefer the engagement. So feel free to ask questions while I'm doing this, but I'm going to read the first poem, And then I'll tell you like a story about each of the poems, because they all come from a place. And the first one is called Love, Heroine. And it's basically a letter that is written by Heroine to Indian people. That's sort of how, that's how you read it, as this letter. And growing up, I didn't realize that a lot of my family members had issues with heroin and were heroin addicts. And I mean, I guess somewhere as a kid, you know, you have an idea about something, but you don't really know what it is. And I didn't kind of come to the realization until later on about this heroin. The thing about this poem is, and sometimes it makes me kind of sad, is I wrote it a long time ago, like in the early 2000s. And at the time, I think the drugs of choice were sort of like alcohol or methamphetamines, you know, and heroin kind of hadn't made it into the reservation yet. And so I'm writing this poem, and when I think about it now, and I didn't think of this when I was writing it, but when I think about it now, it's kind of a warning, like, you know, this could happen, and this is what could happen if heroin comes here. And it did. And so I'll read it to you and let you see what you think. So it's called Love, Heroine. You think you can keep me beyond your reservation borders, away from your loving families with your river rock will, but I'm slicker than that, bitch. There's always a back door, some dumb Indian who will let me creep in so I can rape and pillage. You know the deal, history repeats. Don't try to act like you're innocent, like you never rode the horse, like you Indian fucks are too good for me and what I got. Remember the car in the alley? Alcohol ain't got nothing on me. I'll string you out, then string you up. I'm a noose around your pencil neck. I got your relatives screaming for more. Love, Heroine. So that poem was a hard poem to write because of the damage, because of just how hostile and how terrible heroin is and what it does to people. And how addictive it is. And that's one thing I didn't realize when I was writing this poem, because I didn't really know a whole lot about it. It's so addictive and so hard for people to move away from, I think. And that poem was really also, there's a line that says, remember the car in the alley. And that is a reference to my uncle, who was my dad's brother, who was 33 years old, who died of a heroin overdose in a car in an alley in Oroville, California, all alone. And when I think about that, it makes me really, I mean, it hurts, because he was alone, but also, you know, it was, to me, that it was so unnecessary. Like, to die like that is just so unnecessary. And it causes so much pain in families. And, you know, and they're struggling, like, you know, with the why and the, could we have done something, like all of, you go through all those things. And so that poem is about that particular incident too. And that was obviously a hard one, because, you know, he was so young, and I was young at the time. I think I was like, when it actually happened, I think I was a freshman in high school. But yeah, my dad was devastated. We were all devastated by that. But what I got out of it was, you know, heroin doesn't care who you are or how old you are or where you're from or whatever. It will take you if you you know, take too much. I don't know. It's, you know, my family has lost so many people to drugs and alcohol. Sometimes I wonder, that's where the word resilient comes in, right? Because it's like, how do people survive this stuff, you know? But we do, and we go on, and hopefully, you know, we talk about it and we try to educate people, or we make the decision, or we choose not to do that because we know the kind of pain that it causes. And I don't know I don't know how hard that is or how easy that is. I don't know, but I feel like sometimes, you have to make those kinds of choices when you're in those situations. Somebody says, hey, want to try this, or let's go do this, especially as a young person. With heroin, it just doesn't even seem worth it. It's not, I guess a lot of times I say with heroin, there's not a happy ending. That's not necessarily true though. But I think for a lot of folks, it's just such a terrible addiction. But just to sort of make this a little bit lighter, because I don't want to depress you all, but we're talking obviously about some hard subjects. And he probably, I don't know, I didn't text him to say ask him if I could talk about this, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. My brother-in-law, though, he's like this amazing person, but he managed to beat heroin, and he's been in recovery for 13 years. And he posted on his Facebook the other day, 13 years, and he went back to school, and he's done so many amazing things, but he was in that place. And so, I say, oh, heroin there's no happy endings, but there are. Sometimes you just feel a little bit defeated by it, but there are happy endings, and I think there are ways to I don't know, to be who you're supposed to be without that drug. And I think that culture, and at least for him, culture and returning to traditions, dances, singing, all of the things that we used to do as traditional tribal people have really helped him. And I think that they have helped a lot of people who are in recovery from drugs and alcohol, at least in our neck of the woods. There's still a lot of work to do, and there's still a lot of people who are hurting. But the other message there is that there are services out there, and there are people out there who want to help, and who want to especially bring people back into some of the culture and the traditions and traditional ways of living that don't involve those kinds of things, that drugs, alcohol, that aren't ours. Really, they're foreign to us. They've only been around for a couple hundred years, maybe. Alcohol, I don't know. It was introduced, I think, in the early 1900s around here, maybe a little bit earlier. But yeah, it's there are people who want to help people bring those things back into the lives of those who are impacted by drugs and alcohol. I was saying how I grew up around a lot of drugs and alcohol, a lot of alcohol, because I think it was kind of the drug of choice in the 70s and 80s. So I wrote this poem, and I'll read it. It's called Blackberry Wine. Grandma slammed the bottle down on the table, and it burst into a wind of green shards caught in candlelight, floating, then vanishing into the night. She slumped in her chair, speech slurred, and ordered me to clean the purple stain from her dress, from the splintered floor, from my memory. And so that's just, I call them in my book, there's kind of like the crank poems, alcohol poems, the other drug poems. But, a lot of people, it's hard to say, I saw my grandmother drinking, or I saw that, and I don't know what to do with it. I don't know where to put that, because I don't want to see my grandma drunk, and I don't want to see her slouched in a chair, slumped over. But it's also been a lot of people's reality, seeing that, And so again, I go back to what I was talking about earlier, this idea of like talking about these things and not feeling the shame, I think that's associated with it, because I think that part has been what's prevented so many people from talking and sharing and really kind of from healing. And so that, you know, to make the connection between the poetry and the healing, it's like the talking about it for me is healing. And just the ability to talk about it with other people and to get it out and to know that maybe you're not the only one that feels like that. The poems that I write, I think I was telling another group the other day or a few weeks ago that I don't write poems for like the general public, or I don't write poems for any, like, you know, the poetry world. Like I write poems for my tribal people because I want them to be able to see themselves in them. And whether it's these hard poems or it's these other poems that are about how beautiful our culture is and our traditions and how lucky we are to still have these things intact. Because we really are. I mean, I think some of us might take it for granted a bit, but if you go back east and you talk with some of those tribal people back there, you know, they've been impacted for a lot longer. And so their culture has been affected by that, right? I mean, how could it not be, you know? And so yeah, we're very lucky and very blessed to have these traditions and practices and those kinds of things in our lives still, or have access to them. Because there was a point, I think, that we didn't have access to them. And I think that I hear this story all the time about the Yurok people stopped dancing the jump dance for a number of years because of the way that alcohol was impacting the dance. And so they had they had the wisdom to say, we can't dance this world renewal dance when our people are under the influence of alcohol. Like, we can't do that, you know. And so they stopped dancing, which is a huge thing. It's a huge decision to make. But they did it because they had to, you know. And so just the talking about it is, I'll probably repeat that over and over again, but it's the thing I think that helps the most. Do we have any questions or anything so far before I keep going?
We did have one question from Facebook. A viewer mentioned that they love the poem Blackberry Wine, and they were wondering if you'd be willing to read another one, the 111.
Oh, I can read that one, yeah. Let me find it real quick. So I was talking about how, you know, we have these issues with drugs and alcohol, and how in some ways culture can help lead us out of that. If we begin to rediscover who we are, who we've really always been. And one of the ways to do that is to reclaim that, right? To reclaim who we are, who we've been, who we still are, really. It's just been a little bit interrupted, you know. And that's, this 111 poem is really about that. It's about reclaiming that tattoo. And so those of you who are on Facebook or social media who don't know about the 111 tattoo, it's a tattoo, and it signifies different things in different tribes, but it's a traditional tattoo, and you know, all of our people used to have these traditional tattoos, and they were beautiful. And then, you know, this dominant society comes in and says, not beautiful, or not acceptable, or, you know, that's ugly, and people stop doing it. And they stopped doing it as our culture, as our kids went to boarding school, and as our culture became, you know, interrupted, as I said before. But this poem is about that. So it's called 111. They said you were ugly, sleeping on my face, a symbol of my rite of passage, turned into a mark of my place in their society. So you vanished, and I adopted a different standard of beauty. But now you stir. Beneath my skin, I hear you calling, and some have answered. Some have the courage to call you your own, or call you their own, like I want to, like I need to, reclaim what is mine. And that sort of is my, because obviously I don't have one, but it's my recognition of the courage of all of those women who've done that and have been able to do that. And, you know, one of my mentors and person who very dear to me, who I love very much, Lynn Riesling, she has the 111 tattoo. And I've thought about it as well, you know, over the years. Should I do it? Should I not do it? And she said, with it comes so much responsibility. And I thought, yeah, you're right. Because when you go out into the world and people look at you and they're not familiar with it, you have to explain that to them. You know, you have to educate them. You have to let them know, especially if they ask, right? You have this responsibility that you're carrying now into the world. And that's not foreign to us, you know, as Native people and Native people around here, in particular with our world renewal ceremonies, we have a huge responsibility. Responsibility is like our middle name, but you know, those women who wear that have even greater responsibility, I think. And so I admire that, and I admire the courage to do that in this society where, you know, different standards of beauty don't apply, or their standards of beauty don't necessarily apply to us, but we're taking it back, right? We're reclaiming it.
So I did kind of want to ask, this, I guess this kind of coincides. I really like what you said about, you know, reclamation of, you know, all of this, and how it really does tie in together, like all these other events for Indigenous peoples, such as, you know, genocide, and, you know, addiction is a big part of that, and something that ties into a lot of those, you know, hardships on Indigenous people in general. And I guess I'd also like to go into what you were saying about, you know, you're someone you look up to. What are some things or people specifically that inspire your work?
When I first started writing, other Native writers were very inspirational to me, because I remember reading them and feeling like, oh, I've had that experience, like that. I know what that feels like, you know, because when I was in college in the early, I started Humboldt in 1992 and I graduated in 96. And so, you know, at that point, there were some academics, you know, who had been doing a lot of more academic type writing, but there wasn't a lot of like fiction writers or poetry writers. And so when I started to find those folks, it was like, wow, this is okay. I can see myself in these poems or in this chapter in this book. And it was, you know, it just felt good to recognize yourself in something that wasn't, you know, that was available to you finally, you know. Remember my high school in Hoopa, we didn't have a whole lot of, at least in the history classes and stuff, you know, there was nothing about tribal people, you know, it was just, the education system has for so many years not, you know, just done a really poor job of telling the whole story, as you all know. It's a lot different now than it was when I was growing up, which is good. There's a lot of progress has been made. but those particular writers, Louise Erdrich is a really good, she's an incredible writer. And so her stories they resonate. There are other writers too, but I think probably what inspires me the most though are the people that I watch and observe, because I think that they appear in my poems more than anybody else, just people that I've grown up with, or people who are, leaders, or people who are traditional people, or people who have just been there for me somewhere along the way. I've been very lucky. I've had a lot of people in my life as I was going through college, and because that can be difficult, it can be hard as a Native person. And I went to, I'll just kind of veer off track a little bit, but I went to school in Arizona. And you see me, right? I'm light complected. If I had a nickel for every time someone said, "You're Indian," I would probably have a lot of money. But I grew up on the reservation. Like, that's the only thing I know. Like, it was the only thing I knew. So I went to Arizona, and I'm surrounded by all these like Native people who are darker skinned and darker, all of that. And this one woman says to me, in the classrooms when we're talking about Native stuff, they always ask me. And she said, "But I grew up in the city. I don't know what it's like to live on the reservation. I have no idea. So, but they never ask you." And I said, "Well, you know why they never ask me? Because I don't meet that, like, I'm not the stereotype. Like, I'm not I don't fit their stereotype of what Native people look like." But so I've had like I've had a lot of people in my life who have really been influential. And so I think when I go through my poems, I know that who those people are and how they influence the poem in some way. And a lot of it is just people from, who are singers, or who are dancers, or who have in some way been like, have just done something, and I've seen it, and I'm like, I need to write about that. I want to share those stories. I think that's what it is. Like, so the poems are kind of like, they're like little stories to me in a way. Like, I want to share the stories. I want to share the stories about who we are, about our culture, about, maybe this is coming from me, who feels like, I've been on all these places. I've been lucky. I've been able to live in all these different places, and I've had a lot of different experiences. And and some people think of California as it's just like Southern California, like the beach and LA, and they don't even think about Native people, first of all, being in Southern California. But if they do think about California and Native people, it's a very limited understanding. I mean, there's most people think it's in Arizona. They're like, "There are California Indians," and I was like, "Yeah." So, and this was in the late '90s, but yeah, it's really, I think it's about telling our people's stories, and then I think as my poetry has evolved, and as I've gotten older, it's a lot more about telling everybody's story, Native people's stories in general, too. So I'm trying to do that as well, but at the same time, weave in some of our culture and traditions, and continue to put that in the poem so that people can see themselves. Because we're all connected, and we're all related, and we've all experienced a lot of the same things. California natives in particular. So I guess the short answer to your question is, there's been a lot of people. There are a lot of people who have influenced me. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I'm just wondering. I have, I've got a couple of other poems, but then I've got some other poems that I want to read that I've written, more recently that are more, I think, sort of lean toward the healing aspect of this poetry journey. And so I just want to make sure that we have some time for that.
Yes, definitely. Take it away. And we'll make sure to get some questions at the end. So if anyone has any questions, leave them in the chat.
Okay. I'm going to read one more poem about drugs and drug abuse. Because, and this one's called Crank. And I think I wrote this probably in the early 2000s too, but I think I'll just share this one because it's sort of in the same, it's in the same vein as the Love Heroine poem. So he had a beautiful smile, you know, the kind like cream rising to the top, like shine on chrome, like bait on a hook. But that was before the shrunken face, the blanched skin, the pick sores, the protrusion of rotting teeth. Before the crank, he was a brush dancer. She was a weaver, put sticks and root in her hand and watch miracles unfold like virgin apparitions, like gold rush survival, like old bones coming home. But that was before the parties all night, the sleeping around, the addiction, before the evolution of a bag hoe. He was unashamed. So what if he was attracted to men like tides to the moon, like opposites, like fish to water? But that was before the dirty names, the condemnation, the family denial. Now it's better to be a druggie than a fag. She was a good mother, there for her kids, like t-ball games, like home-cooked meals, like showing up at school year events, but that was before the slinging crank, the instant cash, the hawk jewelry, before she started killing her own people. They had pride, held on to the old ways, like hanging nets, like carving canoes, like stick games and listening to the elders, but that was before the crank, before they stopped giving a shit, before the culture started dying right in front of them. And so I wrote that one obviously as like, you know, look at the impact that this, you know, that this drug and others have on our people and on our communities and on our kids and on our way of life. And, you know, and some of the other social issues, like I have to, I might, I have to hide behind things. I have to numb my pain with drugs because people don't want to accept me, or, you know, just all of those kinds of things. I think people turn to drugs to try to escape from that particular pain of like not being accepted, or of not being able to live up to whatever sort of, you know, thing that they were supposed to live up to. And so, or, you know, maybe some sort of abuse happened in their life. Just, there's so many things that have happened to our tribal people that that make them turn to things that numb that pain. But on the other side of all that, right? Because we still have those things still impact us. Like there are still people who are using methamphetamine. There's still people who are abusing alcohol, and there's still people who are addicted to heroin and pills and other things. You know, those people still need our help, and they still need our support, and they still need to know that that there are people out there who want to help them, that there are programs that, you know, that are available to them, that there are ways, if they feel disconnected from their culture, there are ways to reconnect and reclaim that. Just there are things out there that are going to help them get stronger. And so some of those poems, some of the poems that I've been writing recently are I think they're about the situation we've been in with this whole COVID thing, which is just unreal, right? And we're starting to learn how to adapt, but it's still like it's like living in an alternate reality. And the isolation and the being away from people and the being away from families, I think it's just one of the most difficult things. And one of the answers, at least when this first happened, I think we're a month into it, some of our tribal people decided that we needed to have a dance because we're out of balance and something is not right. And so what we do in our culture is we dance to restore that or to put that back into balance. And I thought this was really one of the most amazing things. And it happened in April. And I don't know how many of you out there are familiar with it, but they held a jump dance. And it wasn't very many people, there wasn't a whole lot, obviously, because of social distancing, all these new terms that we have to use now. But it was just so inspiring to me. Because what we were doing was we were taking responsibility, or we were acting in the way that we are responsible for taking care of this place and this planet and these people. And that's, like I said before, it's a huge responsibility. So I wrote this poem for those people who had the wisdom to come to bring others together and do this dance, and it's called "Dance Away the Sickness." And so these are the poems that I feel like I hope that not only reflect that you can see yourself in this poem, but it reflects the beauty of our culture and our people, but it's also it also lends to the healing not only of ourselves, but of this planet, and which is what we do, what we're supposed to do. So it's called "Dance Away the Sickness." It's April in the year 2020, and we are suffering. When the world breaks and we lose our way, we bring out the regalia, the sturgeon glue. We stitch back the pieces of ocean, river, mountain, sky, human. We must lead the people out of the darkness in the direction of balance. We have songs to drive away what is trying to destroy us. We will build a sacred fire. A few will come together. The rest of us will shelter in place and sing like redwoods whose prayers reach the gods first. We will sing for ourselves, for our communities. We will sing for the crying world, for those who will not survive. We have lived a pandemic. We know the way through it. When our world ended the first time, we listened to the elders. They gave us secret words spoken in the old languages. They told us we are responsible for taking care of acorn, fish, plant, bird, life. There is a virus, they said, and it wants your lungs. But it won't spread to your hearts if you burn the root, if you dance away the sickness and sing the world anew. So raise your basket, stomp out the wicked, tip the earth back, tip it forward, transform again this reality, name it love. So I wrote that in, what's funny too about the way poetry works is, for me, is sometimes it just comes and it goes. And so sometimes there'll be months and I'm like, I can't even put two sentences together. And then I'll be inspired by something like this and it just kind of pours out. And so, I wrote a few more poems about this experience, this COVID experience, and how we have the tools, we have the that whatever that unique special thing is inside of us, that resilience, we have that, and we're going to be able to get through it because we've been through a lot already, and we're still here, and we're still going to be here after this virus, and whatever else is coming down. There are also I've also started to write. I've started a and so these poems, I guess, lean toward healing and reclamation of our power as tribal people, or our power as women, tribal or as Native women as well. Just to help facilitate like this overall healing. And so my cousin Chag Lowry is, he's an author, and he's written a couple of books, and one of them is a comic book, and it's about, it's a Yurok story, Soldiers Unknown it's called. And he was at Padawat Health Village last Christmas. Was it last Christmas? No, yeah, I think so. And he said, "Hey, I'm doing a new book, and will you think about writing some poems?" And he was writing some of the poems about some of the elements that we have used in our traditions or traditional culture. And so I started writing about those too. And there's this one image that he's going to use in this book, and it's of this woman, and it's a contemporary, and she's a firefighter, but she's got a 111 on her face. And I just think it's such a powerful image. And so he asked me, could I write about these things and share these images with me? And so I wrote this poem about strong women who have this resilience, but also this fire inside. And it's called Fire, because that's the element, right? So I'm going to read that one to you. She is fire, fierce in all her ways. She burns to renew, to clear away the remnants of things past, to start life over. She moves like a fever through the body of earth. The temperature of sky rises with her flame. Can you feel the way she changes you? Do you understand she burns for you? That the force of her love is meant to cleanse you. These great mountains, these tall trees know her stories. They have knelt before her for thousands of years and sang, "Everything we love turns to ash. Everything we love is reborn." That's the fire poem. I should try to show you the image. Let's see if you can see it. Can you see it? Yeah. I just think that's such a powerful image. Now I lost my feed. Okay. A number of years ago, some folks who I respect and admire and love, again, Lynn Risling and Julian Lang, they started bringing back this flower dance, or ehuk, for Karuk, in the Karuk country. And my nieces have since have been able to participate in this dance. And again, this is all this part of this healing that we're doing, but also part of this responsibility that we have to our young people and our young women in this particular instance. But participating in that and just the coming together of everyone, it really is such an amazing event, and to honor this young girl as she moves through puberty and becomes a woman. Those ceremonies that have been brought back, not only at Karuk, but at Hupa, and I believe they're doing them in a lot of different places now. And that's so powerful if you think about it, because because they were gone for such a long time. But what does that say to this young woman who goes through this ceremony, and all of these people come together to support her and to dance for her and to dance with her? I mean, it's such an amazing testament to who we are as tribal people, but really how we take care of our people and how we take care of our young people. I'm trying to find the poem. But so far, 3 of my nieces have gone through this, and I've been able to be a part of each one of these dances. And I wrote this poem for my niece Kiana, and we have this dance at this place called Wunkara, which is on the Salmon River in Karuk country. And this poem is called The Wild Flower of Wunkara. Pray for us, little wildflower, as we pass on our way to the dance grounds just above the place where the Salmon River flows long and without bend. Sing us a blessed flower dance song. Let it make its way from camp to ridge as we give name to the girl who is arriving, who opens her petals to the rising sun of life. Wildflower, your roots plunge deep and fix you sturdy to the earth. Your grace in the whirl of spring winds reminds us how to live and love, always in balance. So I just wrote that little poem for her about 4 years ago. And I say 4 years ago because you know how Facebook likes to remind you like when things pop up, like memories from so many years ago. I got that just a while ago. So I figured I must have to read it for some reason. So I know we're coming up on an hour, so I think I want to start to wrap it up, if that's okay with you guys. And I don't know if you have any additional questions, or if this has been, I mean, I guess my hope is that that whether you're young or older, or whomever you are, if you've got some sort of pain or something, that that one, you talk about it, and the other, that there are people out there for you. There are also ways that you can express that if you don't know how. And I think that writing and poetry has always been that way for me. I was really kind of shy and quiet when I was younger, and so it was a way to be able to, put feelings down on paper and then kind of just not have to do anything with them. Now I have to do things with them, but that's okay. And so that in itself, I think, is healing. And whether you're impacted by drugs and alcohol or other family things, it's I guess there's always a way, I think, and maybe I'm just Pollyanna or naive or whatever, but I feel like there's always a solution, and there's always a way to find some way to deal with whatever that is. And like I said earlier, a lot of times it's pain. It's just a pain that people don't know how to process, or it's a pain that they don't know how to name. Or it's anger because of a pain. it's all of these emotions, but usually the core, or the piece that pain is the piece that starts whatever it is that leads someone in a direction that's not healthy. I'm trying to figure out which poem to leave you with. Have there been any additional questions?
Well, I just want to say the fire poem personally, it's beautiful and heavy, and I appreciate that. And I actually love that you shared the flower dance poem for your niece, because last week in our the Yurok Tribe Health and Human Services hosted a workshop from Kishan, Dr. Kishan, and
Good, yeah.
Yeah, she talked about the flower dances, so I think that like kind of coincides very well, and it was meant to be. And so anyways, yeah, I just want to thank you for sharing those poems. And I did want to ask the question of other than poetry, which I assume is one of your forms of healing, what are some other things that you turn to for healing or you recommend to people?
I think surrounding yourself with people who love and support you is so important. Finding that thing, whatever that thing is, that makes you feel like that sparks some sort of joy. I mean, some people will go and get in a boat and go out on the river, or they'll have a special place. Like my family goes up to the Salmon River, which I think is really a special place for every single one of us. But that doesn't, it could be anything. It could be, any place that sparks joy. Some people, well, we can't do it now, but some people will go to museums and look at art. I think that just surrounding yourself, or making sure that you stay connected to things and people that inspire you. I try to do that. And I don't know, and it's probably not just me. I think there are other people, but really just paying attention to people and observing them and being empathetic and trying to understand where other people are coming from. I think that lends to, a healthier perspective and view on the world. And I think you're able to maybe deal with things a little bit. It makes dealing with hard things a little bit easier. But yeah, I mean, I like to read too. So music, I love to listen to music. I like to read. I like to read different poets. I like to read really old poets, like from a long time ago. But, people were I don't know. They spoke differently, but the thinking was different about them. So there's some poets like Rumi I really love. And music has always been something that's just, I don't know, it just sparks some kind of joy or happiness. And so, I just think continue to be connected to those things is really important. Not to forget to take care of yourself too while you're trying to take care of everybody else, because a lot of us do that.
Definitely, I agree. Well, we do have another question in from the Facebook chat, and they asked, what are your thoughts on those that have been lost to colonization, and do you think the ancestors will reclaim them in one of your poems?
That could happen, yes. I don't know that they're lost, to be honest. I feel like if Native blood runs through you, then it's in your DNA, and there's some way, like, I have to believe that there's some way that you can connect to that you're never really lost, not completely, that you have the ability to find your way. At least that's my hope.
And to kind of follow up with that, as an artist and someone who, you know, has an impact on your own community, what are your hopes for the communities and future generations as far as, you know, addiction?
So I watched one of Two Feathers' presentations the other day, and my brother-in-law was actually a part of it, so I wanted to watch it. And there was another gentleman from a group called White Bison, and I'm not familiar with them, but they're like again, alcohol and drug counseling, or they talk about well-briety instead of sobriety, but you know, just overall well-being. And I think that's a very like native concept, you know, just it's a holistic approach as opposed to, you know, a more narrow view of these kinds of afflictions. And so he said something that really struck me so much that I even commented, because usually I watch Facebook, you know, live and I don't comment, but he said, challenge your leaders to be sober. And I thought that was so powerful because why not, you know? I mean, these are the people who are the decision makers or who have, you know, even greater responsibility when it comes to protecting our people and leading by example and being able to think about our future and being able to you know, they've got a lot of power to make a lot of positive change. And you know, it's hard to do that if you have an addiction or if you are abusing something. And you know, and the other piece too about trying to stay away from that stuff is, you know, when we dance and when we're around our dances, you know, we're not supposed to behave like that. You know, we're supposed to try to be as clear-minded and as possible. And so I think that that's my hope too, that we continue to be that way, because I've seen that. I've seen a lot of change in our ceremonies from when I was going and in our communities from the time that I was, you know, in my teenage years to now. So there's been a lot of positive change. And I want to see that continue. And I also want people to believe that, I want to know that that the leaders are supporting that, the tribal leaders are supporting that, but also that that the people believe that themselves, that they have the power within themselves to make changes, because they do. I believe that 100%. You know, and when they're ready, they will. And that's another lesson I learned about through you know, having family members who have been impacted. It's like, there's nothing I can do to change them. They're going to change when they're ready. And so I guess my hope is that that at some point they become ready to do that. And then, you know, and that everyone supports those people when they are ready to make those changes. So I just want to see our communities continue to heal and to really take seriously their responsibilities as tribal people, because it's a lot.
Definitely. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate all your responses. And I wanted to open it up if there's anything else you'd like to add before you get off today.
No, I'm just grateful to be able to sit here with you today, and then for the other opportunities that I've had lately to talk about my poetry, to be open about it, to, you know, talk about the, you know, hard things, and no, I'm just grateful that that I'm able to share, and that, you know, I get a lot of, I guess one thing I will say to close is that you never know when you write something how it's going to impact people or a person. And when I hear from other people, you know, how the words that I write make them feel something, then my job is done. Because that's all I think that's all I've ever wanted, is for somebody to read something that I write and for them to feel something. And so that's been happening. I've been getting that kind of feedback quite a bit, so that I'm very happy about that. And I also just want people to be able to continue to see themselves and their beauty and the beauty of their culture in these poems.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Shaunna. I really appreciate it personally. You know, this is something that's special to me. And yeah, I just want to thank you for sharing your beautiful art and poetry with us, because I know sometimes it can be, you know, heavy and, you know, it can take a lot of energy out of you. So I just want to say thank you for, you know, willing to do this for everyone today. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, yeah, I just want to thank our presenter again, Shaunna McCovey. She's wonderful. She wrote the wonderful book, Smokehouse Boys, that many of you probably have heard of. If you want to read this book in the future, we can include the information for it on our Wellness and Recovery Series Facebook page so that you can go check it out. And yeah, I just want to say thank you again, Shaunna, for joining us today. Oh, and also if you fill out our eval, which I will mention at the end of this presentation, you can get in the raffle to win the book, actually. So make sure you fill that eval out. So again, thank you so much, Shaunna, for this very heavy and beautiful presentation and for sharing your art with us today. Before we go today, I do want to share with everyone a little bit about the rest of the week, because it is our last week. I know it's crazy. We are almost done, and we actually have one more presenter today, so we'll give you some more information about that. But first, even though it's the last week, we still want to remind you all, you can still register through Eventbrite if you would like at the Wellness and Recovery Series.eventbrite.com link. And you can still get information about what's coming up. You can even get information about what's already happened. So make sure you still register through Eventbrite. I'm wearing my Wellness and Recovery Series t-shirt today. And you can get yours also by registering through Eventbrite. We will still be having live presentations today, tomorrow, and Thursday. Wednesday is Wellness Wednesday, as always. The Yurok Tribe Health and Human Services will be doing their Wellness Wednesday mornings also. So make sure you register for Eventbrite to get information on that. We are ending on June 30th, which we will have our wrap-up event. And this will include, yeah, us talking about our raffles that we've been talking about all month, and just kind of going into what's going to be happening in the future, and just a little goodbye for everyone. So we will be doing that out on Zoom and Facebook Live as always. So if you want to stay up to date, check out our Eventbrite page or our Facebook page at Wellness and Recovery. The Wellness Art Challenge is still going on. The deadline was technically yesterday, but we're still taking submissions. So if you want to throw one in there last minute, you can get the PDF over on our Wellness and Recovery Facebook page or on the Eventbrite. We just want to ask you to draw, or any medium really. We heard some amazing poetry today, so if you're feeling inspired to write some poetry, we ask that you can use any medium. The sky's the limit. Pictures, collage, anything. We're not judging by skill. So we just ask that you draw or put in what your wellness activity is, and take a picture, scan it in, and upload it on social media. And you can use the hashtags HealthyDelNort or Wellness Challenge, or you can just email it to us directly at rxsafedelnort@gmail.com. We do have age groups, so include the name and the age group for your artist, and we'll be sharing the art, and anyone who submits a piece will be in our art challenge raffle. So Make sure you get those in this week before Thursday. And like I said, again, it's our last week, so we'll be right down here at the bottom. We've got our last week's schedule. This evening at about 4:30, we'll be having the presentation with Dr. Groves, a wonderful presentation. And tomorrow morning, we'll be having the Yurok Health and Human Services hosting their Wellness Wednesday mornings. And their guest this week is Boyd Ferris, so make sure you join in on that at 10 a.m.
I know him. I can vouch for him.
Awesome. So we've got a voucher for him. So make sure you join in on that, because they've had some amazing presentations the past month, really informative and beautiful. And so make sure you join in on those. All the information's on the Facebook page as well. In the afternoon, we'll also be doing movement, dance, and Pilates with 7 kids. So make sure you join in on that. It'll be nice to get some moving around. I know we've been on the computer a lot all month, but we've had a few good movement activities. So make sure you join us for our last one. And Thursday morning, we'll be having the Yurok Tribe Wellness Coalition Narcan training. So if you or someone you know has not done the training yet, come join, because you can get your Narcan and your certification to carry it, as well as an incentive. So make sure you join us for that. It'll be pretty awesome. They do wonderful trainings. And in the afternoon on the 30th is our closeout event, and it's actually going to be at 3 to 4 p.m. And we'll just be kind of talking about what we're going to be doing in the future, and sitting down with all the other coalitions who've been helping plan all of this. And we'll announce drawing challenge and the raffles and say a little goodbye. So make sure you join in on all of that. And again, just a huge thank you to our presenter today, Shaunna McCovey, amazing, wonderful poet. And to all of those who participated and asked questions and listened. Like, it's beautiful, and I appreciate you all participating. If you want more information about the series, again, you can follow our Facebook page. If you want more information about RX Safe Del Norte, you can check out our website or our Facebook page. And again, we will be having a raffle on Thursday. So if you want to possibly win one of these amazing books that included many of the poems read today, the Smokehouse Boys by Shaunna McCovey, you can actually win one. So make sure you fill out the evaluation form. Link is here. It will be in the chat as well for everyone, so that you can get your entry into the raffle. So again, please make sure to fill out that evaluation form after this workshop, and you can get a raffle entry. And again, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. We appreciate having you all, and we'll see you soon, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you, everyone.